Hagman and Hagman report for today. It's Thursday, December 25th, 2014, Christmas Day here in the United States, 2014. I'm Doug Hagman, co-host, along with my son Joe Hagman. Together, we're in studio, and together we are the Hagman and Hagman report, folks. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you so much. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. Yes, we know that today is not the birthday of our Lord and Savior, but of course we do celebrate it today. Well, many people, many Christians celebrate his birthday today. And I just harken back to the quote by Steve Quayle, who said, and we all know, we all know the backstory. We all know what's going on with Christmas Day with respect to, you can talk about Saturnalia, you can talk about all of that. We understand that. But more than any other time, perhaps, during the year, families get together. And if the myth, if you will, of Christmas, or of Christmas itself, makes that happen, facilitates that, then enjoy that. Anyway, folks, you're listening to the only show where we believe, where we present the news to you in 3D. So get your 3D headphones or put your 3D glasses over the speakers of your computer or wherever you might be listening to this. And, of course, you can join us here in the information dissemination business. We look well beyond the headlines and bylines, the fog of disinformation, to bring you the news behind the news. For those new to the program, maybe just tuning in tonight, well, because you have nothing better to do, no one to see, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. That's Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 Eastern. Our home base on the Internet is HagmanandHagman.com, and we're simulcast, generally speaking, by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the HagmanandHagmanReport.com. Our home base is HagmanandHagman.com. I want to thank each and every one of you again for sharing your Christmas with us. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who has supported us by, whether it's through a contribution or through words or deeds or things that books, CDs of informational value, just numerous ways. We're very humbled by that, and we're very thankful for you, and we hope that you're joining us this Christmas Day. Joe, welcome to the studio today on this Christmas Day 2014.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Hope you guys all had a pleasant and relaxing, fun last couple of days. I know we got to spend some time with our family, both my wife's side and my side of the family, and we had a lot of fun. And it's nice to get a day off and be able to do that, well rested, relaxed, and ready to go.
Well, folks, we're going to get into a lot of news tonight, but I wanted to open the program up tonight with a story. I got this via email in one of the intelligence news groups to which I subscribe. In terms of, there are intelligence agencies or members of intelligence agencies that will have mailing lists, and usually some are very low volume, some are high volume, some are high priority, some are low priority, but this particular message came, it was so interesting, it came at 11:11 this morning, and I happened to, it just caught my eye. And this is a story about an old man and his gas station. Now, if you've heard this before, just be patient and perhaps reminisce with me. If you haven't heard this before, it should uplift you. The old man sat in his gas station on a cold Christmas Eve. He hadn't been anywhere in years since his wife had passed away. He had no decorations, no tree, no lights. It was just another day to him. He didn't hate Christmas. He just couldn't find a reason to celebrate it. There were no children in his wife long since gone. He was sitting there looking at the snow. It's falling for the last hour and wondering what that was all about when the door to his filling station opened and a homeless man stepped through. Instead of throwing the man out, old George, as he was known by his customers, told the older man to come in and sit by the space heater and warm up. And he said, "Thank you, sir, but I don't mean to intrude." That, said the stranger, "I see you're busy. You'll just go." "Oh," George replied, without something hot in your belly. And he turned and opened a wide-mouthed thermos and handed it to the stranger. George said, "It ain't much, but it's hot and tasty. It's stew. Made it myself. When you're done, there's coffee. And it's fresh." Just at that moment, he heard the ding of the driveway bell. Remember those, folks? "Excuse me, be right back," George said. There in the driveway was an old 53 Chevy. Steam was rolling out of the front. The driver was absolutely panicked. "Hey, mister, can you help me?" the driver said with a deep Spanish accent. My wife is with child, and the car's broken." George opened the hood. It was bad. The block looked cracked from the cold. The car was dead. "You ain't going anywhere in this thing," George said as he turned away. "But, mister, please help." The door to the office closed behind George as he went in. George went to the office wall and got the keys to his old truck and went back outside. He walked around the building and opened the garage, started the truck, and drove it around to where the couple was waiting. "Here, you can borrow my truck," he said. "She's not the best thing you ever looked at, but she sure runs well." George helped put the woman in the truck and watched it speed off into the night. George turned and walked back inside the office. "Glad I loaned them the truck. Their tires were shot, too. That old truck, well, it's got brand new tires." George thought as he was talking to the stranger, but the man had gone. The thermos was on the desk, empty, with a used coffee cup beside it. "Well, at least he's got something in his stomach," George thought. George went back outside to see if the old Chevy would start. It cranks slowly, but it started nonetheless. He pulled it into the garage where the truck had been. He thought he'd mess around with it, tinker with it, for something to do. Christmas Eve meant no customers. He discovered the block hadn't been cracked. It was just the bottom hose on the radiator. "Well, I can fix this," he said to himself, so he put on a new one. Those tires aren't going to get him anywhere, certainly not through the winter. So he took the snow treads off of his wife's old Lincoln. They were like new, and he certainly wasn't going to drive the car. As he was working, he heard a gunshot. He ran outside, and beside a police car, an officer lay on the cold ground. He was bleeding from his left shoulder. The officer moaned, "Help me." George helped the officer inside as he remembered the training he had received in the Army as a medic. He knew the wound needed attention, and attention right away. Pressure to stop the bleeding, he thought. The laundry company had just been there that morning and had left clean shop towels. He used those and duct tape to bind the wound. They say duct tape can fix anything, he said, trying to make the policeman feel at ease. Something for the pain, George thought. All he had were the pills that he used for his back. Put a couple in his hand and said, "These ought to work," and gave it to the policeman in a cup of water. "You hang in there. I'm going to get you an ambulance," George said. But the phone was dead. Maybe I can get one of your buddies on the talk box you've got in your police car." He went out to find that the bullet had gone into the dashboard and had destroyed the radio. So he went back in to find the policeman sitting up. "Thanks," said the officer. "You could have left me there. The guy that shot me, well, he's still out there." George sat down beside him. "I'd never leave an injured man in the Army. And I'm certainly not going to leave you. George pulled back the bandage to check the bleeding. Looks worse than what it is, through and through. The bullet passed right through you. Good thing I missed the important stuff, though, it looks like. I think with time you're going to be right as rain. George got up and poured a cup of coffee. How do you take it? He asked the officer. None for me. Oh, you're gonna drink this, best in the city. And George added, too bad I ain't got no donuts. The officer laughed and winced at the same time. The front door of the office then flew open. In a burst, a young man with a gun ran through the door. Give me all your cash. Do it now, the young man yelled. His hand was shaking, and George could tell that he'd never done anything like this before, just based on his appearance and based on the fact that his hand was shaking so badly. Hey, that's the guy that shot me, yelled the officer. George turned around and said, son, why are you doing this? You need to put that cannon away. Someone else is going to get hurt. Now, the young man was confused. Shut up, old man, or I'll shoot you too. Now give me the cash. Just then the cop was reaching for his gun. George looked at the officer and said, hey, put that thing away. We got one too many in here now. He turned his attention to the young man. Son, it's Christmas Eve. If you need the money, well then, here. It ain't much, but it's all I got. Now put that gun away. George pulled $150 out of his pocket and handed the money to the young man. And as he did so, he reached for the barrel of the gun at the same time. The man released his grip on the gun. The young man fell to his knees and began to cry. I'm not very good at this, am I? All I wanted to do was buy something for my wife and my son. I lost my job, my rent's due, my car got repossessed last week, and he's sobbing. George handed the gun to the cop. Son, we all get in a bit of a squeeze now and then. The road gets hard sometimes, but we make it through the best we can. So George got the young man to his feet and sat him down in the chair across from the cop. Sometimes we do stupid things. George handed the young man a cup of coffee. Being stupid is one of the things that makes us human. Coming in here with a gun ain't the answer. Now sit there and get warm and we'll sort this thing out. And by this time the young man stopped crying. He looked over to the cop. Sorry I shot you. It just went off. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Cop looked at him and said, shut up and drink your coffee. George could hear the sirens outside. The police car and an ambulance skidded to a halt. Two cops came through the door, guns drawn. Chuck, you okay? One of the cops asked the wounded officer. Not bad for a guy who took a bullet. How'd you find me? A GPS locator in the car. Best thing since sliced bread. Who did this? The other cop asked as he approached the young man. Who did this? Chuck answered him. Well, I don't know. The guy ran off into the dark. He just dropped his gun and ran. Just dropped this gun right here and ran. Now George and the young man both looked at each other with a puzzled look. Cop then looked at the wounded cop then looked at the other officers and says, hey, that guy there, he works here. Yep, George said. Just hired him this morning. This boy lost his job. The paramedics came in and loaded Chuck onto the stretcher and into the ambulance. The young man leaned over the wounded cop and whispered, why? Why? The wounded officer, Chuck, just said, hey, Merry Christmas, boy. And you too, George, and thanks for everything. Well, looks like you got one doozy of a break there. That ought to solve some of your problems. George went into the back room and came out with a box. He pulled out a ring box. before your wife. I don't think Martha would mind. She said it would come in handy someday. The young man looked inside to see the biggest diamond ring he ever saw. I can't take this, said the young man. It means something to you. George said, you know what? Now it means something to you, too. I got my memories. That's all I need. George reached into the box again. A toy airplane, a racing car, and a little metal truck appeared next. They were toys that the oil company representative left for him to sell. Take this. Take this for that little man of yours at home. At this point, the young man began to cry again as he handed back the $150 that the old man had handed him earlier. And what are you supposed to buy Christmas dinner with? You keep that too. Count it as part of your first week's pay, George said. Now get home to your family. With tears streaming down his face, the young man turned to George and says, I'll be here first thing in the morning for work. If that job offer is still good, I'm closed Christmas Day. I'll see you the day after. George turned around to find that the stranger had returned. Surprised, he said, where'd you come from? I thought you left. Oh, I've been here. I've always been here, said the stranger. Why don't you say don't celebrate Christmas? Why? Well, after my wife passed away, I just couldn't see what all the bother was. Putting up a tree and all seemed like a waste of a good pine tree. Baking cookies like I used to with Martha just wasn't the same. Not by myself. And besides, I was getting a little on the chubby side anyway. Stranger put his hand on George's shoulder. But you do celebrate the holiday, George. You gave me food and drink and warmed me when I was cold and hungry. The woman with a child will bear a son, and he will become a great doctor. Oh, and that policeman you helped? He's going to go on to save 19 people from being killed by others. 19. The young man who tried to rob you, he'll work for you and then become a rich man and share his wealth with many people, remembering this day. That's the spirit of this season, and you keep it as good as any man. George was taken aback by all this stranger had said. Yeah. And how do you know all this? Asked the old man. Trust me, George. I got the inside track on this sort of thing. And when your days are done, you're going to be with Martha again. The stranger moved to the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, George, I've got to go now. George watched as the old man's leather jacket and his torn pants and his ripped-up shoes turned into a white robe. You see, George, it's my birthday. Merry Christmas. And that, folks, is the start of our Christmas Day program.
Good story. Too often, we don't take for granted the opportunities we're given in good and bad situations, and because of our lack of being able to see the bigger picture and our narrow-mindedness and stubbornness of mind, we those opportunities that come across are so often lost. But praise the Lord that He will continue giving opportunities, and we have to keep our heart and our mind open to those, because we tend to shut them out more than anyone else around us for ourselves. We're our own worst enemy through our thought process, through what we've seen through technology unfold with the culture of violence, the video games, the movies. As we see, society go one way and the leadership go a completely other opposite, but yet just as deadly way, and we're all sitting here wondering what's happening. That tends to take up all of our what we're paying attention to, what we're looking at for that day. And a lot of times we need to take a step back and just spend our time with the Lord and in His Word, because too often we get that tunnel vision and it hinders our growing process. But with that, I want to remind everybody tomorrow we're going to be live on the Alex Jones Show. You said 1 o'clock Eastern Time?
1 o'clock Eastern Time, that's correct.
All right. Yeah, we'll be on there. It's going to be a lot of fun, as it always is. And we'll be back here tomorrow night. Also, we don't have any guests lined up, so we have a lot of things that we're going to get into over the next 2 days. And I don't know where you want to start tonight.
Well, we've got a lot of things to get into. I came across this. Let me just kind of start out with some factoids here, or some information that I think that everyone would be interested in hearing. I was doing some investigation, some research, and one of the questions that often comes up here that we always hear, it seems like whenever we have somebody like V, the Guerrilla Economist, on, or Steve Quayle or others, it's always, what do you think the silver and gold is going to top out at, or what's the lowest it can go? And I was looking at the low side of things. So we're just going to go with gold, for example, because I think that there's a misconception, and the misconception out there is, and especially at this time of year, and especially as prices, or the value, or the value against the U.S. dollar on gold goes lower, people have a tendency to demonize gold, for example. And they often quote scripture, they're going to throw it in the streets, it's going to be useless. Well, yeah, that's going to happen eventually. But right now, in the still somewhat normal days, and even through the economic collapse and getting through to the other side, it's a great store of wealth. But to answer the questions of well, just how low, it's interesting because here's the findings, and this was concurred by a number of independent researchers as well. For every ton, for example, at a gold mine, they mine about 5.3 grams of gold for every ton of earth that they move. It's not a lot. Think about that. 5.3 grams for every ton of earth that they move. And that's rock, usually. Tons of rock per ounce. And extracting the gold, if you look at the top 50 or so mines, what it costs from start to finish, from starting the mine to the end, the last moment of refinement. What's the cost, do you think, for an ounce of gold? Today's dollars. Joe, you want to take a stab at it? The cost.
What? You're saying the cost to mine the gold?
No, well, yes, I'm sorry. The cost to mine 1 ounce of gold from the very start to the very end of the process, and that is also refined. I mean, that includes the refinement. What do you think the cost is, roughly? I mean, gold is sitting now at $1,157 an ounce, or roughly thereabouts. So, what do you think that the price? What do you think it costs to mine 1 ounce of gold?
I was going to say around $600 to $800, and you showed me that figure there, $919 in today's market.
Right. Now that's from start to finish, just as an FYI. So the other aspect of things, and I was doing some research and looking at numbers, going back to 2012, for example, there were 2,700, and I'm rounding numbers here, 2,700 tons of gold produced in 2012. So that's 2,700 tons. Where did it go? Well, 324 tons went directly into industry, electronics and such. That is gone. That's gone. That's never to be used or found or recycled, basically. plating and stuff like that, of instruments and things. 1,404 tons of that 2,700 tons goes to jewelry, and what's left is just over a third, 918 tons, into investment coinage. So, coinage. Now, if you look at the numbers, just look at the numbers that we're looking at here. You see the trading on the trading of the paper. Okay, just imagine if everyone demanded delivery, which is not going to happen because a lot of the trades occur computer in its interagency trading and all this. But the paper market is 400 times greater than the physical market. Okay, now wrap your head around that. Kind of like the fiat system of our U.S. dollar, where it's just an incredibly, it's just a farce. Well, how low could the cost or the price or the dollar against the dollar could an ounce of gold go? Could it go to $919? Sure. What would happen? Well, the mines certainly wouldn't be making any money, or not much anyway. And if it fell even further, even down to $600 an ounce, you'd have mines closing everywhere. And closing a mine is not what it's not like closing a coffee shop. The process is much more involved than that. You can close a mine in a month or two, and the problem is it would take you another year or two to start the mining operation over again. So, having said that, where is gold going to go? And is it wise to have it? Of course, it's wise to have it. Of course. But, so hopefully those numbers will resonate with people out there thinking that, well, I bought gold when it was 1,800. Well, I don't even know what the high was. I don't know. I bought gold at this price, and now it's down to this price, and I got robbed. Well, folks, look, it's all. You cannot face it really. We're being gamed every second of the day, aren't we? So, just want to let you know that that's. Now, I'm sure silver is somewhat similar, although we do know that silver is a byproduct of copper mines, so perhaps a closure of mines would not be, is also, I shouldn't say the product, but it's also a byproduct of copper mines. So,
it's also used in 80% of silver is used for cell phones and other capabilities through technology. It's one of the highest conductors of electricity, I believe. And I think I'll have to look this up and double check it, but last time I looked, I think 80% of it was used in creation of new technology, like computers and cell phones and medical equipment.
So there's a heavy industrial demand for silver, and so we know that. And silver will, in fact, I truly believe, based on everything that I've seen, that gold and silver will, in fact, rise. And one of the issues, looking back over 2014, look at the news stories that we've covered, folks. We've covered everything from Ebola to the economy to Russia and Syria and race wars and amnesty and Benghazi, the Middle East and everything. And we were kind of doing some program prep and wondering, well, what should we cover tonight? And I think that a common theme tonight is the geopolitics of World War III, because I do believe, folks, that I really believe, and I think that we can have somewhat of a consensus on this, that World War III is already underway, and I believe that it could turn hot perhaps in 2015. At any rate, I believe that 2015 will be a year of change, significant change. But as we go through this, and we're broadcasting on Christmas because we're really talking to not the people who've got families around them or surrounded by families, but we're talking to the people who are working in their offices tonight. We're talking to the people who are home alone tonight. We're talking to the people who don't have anybody tonight. We're talking to the people who believe that things are going badly, and they're probably going to get worse. They don't have anybody. I don't have anybody, you might say. And one thing that really gets to me, people talk, and there are people that will say, they'll write or they'll email us or they'll write on some obscure blog somewhere. Don't listen to these guys. They're selling fear. It's doom porn. It's fear porn. They just want to scare you to sell their products.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, you know what? We are in the larger sense, and I want everyone who's alone and listening to this, whether you're in a patrol car or you're at home, you're looking outside the window and thinking it can't get any worse than what it is. And maybe you're confused, concerned. I just want you to know that, as bad as things could get, and probably will get, if you believe in God and the higher power, and if you're a Christian, and if you're truly a Christian, you know that we're already fighting from a position of victory. And you know that the people who accuse us of selling fear and doom porn, they're either intellectually bankrupt or afraid themselves. If they're afraid themselves, I feel very, very, very sorry for them, and I'll pray for them. Because we don't sell fear. We don't peddle fear. All we want to do is just tell you what's going on. No one else will. I mean, if you want to know, if you want just the warm and fuzzies, go turn on TV Land or your television or whatever, or listen to the national news with Brian Williams, or listen to a station or someone else. They'll tell you what you want to hear. But I'll tell you something, if there is peril facing you, as there is today, don't you want to be warned so you can prepare? I mean, if a car is barreling out of control and it's has the potential to hit you, don't you want to be yanked out of the way or pushed out of the way or guided out of the way? I hope so. But lastly, and then we'll get into the meat here. But I think Joe and I were talking earlier, and I think that really, to those who are alone this year and have lost, maybe you've lost a mom or a dad, or maybe both, or your husband or wife, or maybe your entire family through a divorce, maybe, or some other tragic events in your life. And maybe things didn't go very well for you this year. We get that. We can hand you a bottle of whiskey and say, here, dull your pain. That's not the answer. Just know that we're beside you, next to you, with you. We understand. We want to help. We want to be part of your lives. I mean, I'm not trying to get goofy here. I'm just trying to be sensible, because we look, anyone who's lived any length of time has experienced tragedy, has experienced loss, has experienced loneliness. And you could be with 50 people right now and still feel lonely. We get that. But there are answers, there are ways out of this, and we want to help you. So as we talk about the news and events and things that were not good news, we try to provide solutions for you as well. But the ultimate solution is right there, be on your coffee table or on your bookshelf. Could be on your nightstand. Pick it up and read it. Pick it up and read it. Pray. We'll pray with you. Chance from American Survival Wholesale has sent us a prayer. We'll read that here at the top of the first and third, top of the hours. Pray with us. Use us. We want to be here for you. You know, it's. We get so many emails, but you know, it's the people that are really hurting that we're speaking to, and it's the people that are really alone that we're speaking to, and it's just understand that we care, and if we could, we'd manifest ourselves. If we had one of those Star Trek machines, what are those things that zoom you in or phase you in and out, we'd give you a hug.
Yeah, we can get I don't know how much it costs, but I see that those holographic, what do? They project holographic images of the person. A few $1 million, we might be able to get those, but probably better invested in a studio and equipment.
Yeah, and besides, I don't think you'd want a hologram of either one of us, so
no,
we'll just that would be it'd scare the daylights out of you, right? Anyway, let's take a look at the. I just, and Joe and I both want you to know that we want you to know that we understand, and I know Joe has and I have. I mean, we've both been in some pretty dark and dank places, and we've been alone, and we sat on that rock and looked out and thinking, my goodness, things can't get any worse. Oh, they most sure can. But as long as you have life in your body, as long as you've got life, there's always hope. And as long as you've got life, you're here for a reason. See, that's the thing. You're alive today, right now, and you're listening to this broadcast for a reason. I don't know what that reason is. Maybe it's something we might say. Maybe it's something you might hear. Maybe it's just something that I don't know. But you're here for a reason. I was talking to a young man today who was pretty crushed. He let's just say that he's estranged from his wife. I don't want to say lost his wife. He's estranged from his wife, certainly not by his choice, and he tried to make things right. She just a few weeks ago said, it's over, it's done. He's got a 3-year-old boy. Can't see him. Can't see him on Christmas. Can't see him yesterday. Can't see him today. He's got nobody. His job is on the ropes. His parents, well, they just don't want him. And there's a lot of despair there, but you know what? He knows. He knows that this too shall pass, that he's here for a reason, and he's trying to find that reason, looking for that reason, listening for that reason, and praying. But he's got belief. He's got belief. He's got belief in God, and he's got belief that there is a reason for him to be alive, and there's a reason for things to be taking place right now. And that sounds trite, Do you ever get somebody to say, well, there's a reason for this. There's a reason why you're going through this.
Oh, yeah. Usually when you hear that is the last time you want to, pretty much one of the only times or, least times you want to hear that being said. seems to be how it is with me, at least. Anything bad that happens or anything that you go through, whether it's a physical illness or whatever it is, when you're doing this, when this is happening for a reason, yet it's creating pain in your life in the here and now, it takes your mind in a bad direction. It can, and it does if you let it. And that's just it. How much will you let it take up? Rather than trying to think positively and look for the good in the situations you're in. And don't be like me. And so often I do this still is complaining and when we have a roof over our heads, we have the Lord who's on our side, we have food on our table. That's all we really need, our health, as you said. But it's the other stuff out there we let into our lives that is unneeded that usually causes us the most problem.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny because I had the opportunity to speak with Russ Dizdar recently, and of course Russ, Russ is a really a tremendous man. Russ Dizdar, Shatter the Darkness, right? For some reason, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put his banner up on our website, hagmanandhagman.com. But, there are a lot of Christians will embrace the philosophy of having demons in your life. Now, I get that, I understand that, and that's true. But sometimes circumstances where you're at are just because you made some stupid decisions, right? I mean, I am not in any way, shape, or form, saying that Satan isn't at work, but sometimes you make some really stupid decisions. I know I have, boy, and we all have. But with the new year, as we approach the new year, now it's time to really look forward. I don't care if you're 17 listening to this broadcast or 70. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you've got 2 legs working, 2 arms and 2 ears and 2 eyes, or if you're on crutches or if you're in a wheelchair. It's a clean slate for 2015, as best it can. We're getting to that point. It's a clean slate for tomorrow. You wake up tomorrow. It's a new day. And there's hope. With every sunrise, there's hope. And I don't want to sound goofy or trite, but seriously, let's get our heads screwed on right, because you know why? We're going to need to be toughened up a little bit. We're going to need to face some things in the next year that are going to be unpleasant. And we're all going to go through it. The question is, are you mentally and spiritually prepared to go through it? Do you want to hear what's coming? Or do you want to just put your hands over your ears and say, oh, you're just selling doom porn, fear porn, shame on you, how dare you? Oh, I got a mailbox full of that. Yeah. But then I got a mailbox, we got mailboxes, Joe, full of, thank you. You've opened my eyes. Thank you. Steve's opened my eyes. Thank you. Insert guest name here. They've opened our eyes. No, thank you. And I got to tell you, the thank yous and the people who are becoming awakened to what's taking place, the gaming of us, how we're being gamed and how we're being manipulated, and everything that's a lie. We are waking up the masses, not just we. I mean, collectively, the alternative media, and for that, we are doing our part as watchmen. In the second that we stop doing that, or the second that and this is my biggest fear. I don't care about honestly, I don't care about the people who say doom porn, fear porn, making money off of, making money. Okay. That's why, no, I'm not going to go there. I don't care. I care about the people who we've positively impacted. And others. And you know what the great part is, and again, Joe and I were talking about this, and I'll give it to you, Joe, and then you can comment on this, but it's kind of like boy, how can I put this? It's kind of like having a cold. You know, you just never know who's going to pick that cold up and spread it to the next person and the next person. It's probably a really bad analogy, but you know what I mean. You just don't know if you hear something or feel something. You just don't know how many people you'll touch, and you'll probably never know this side of heaven how many people you've had a positive impact upon. And I think that's what we're all here for. We're all going to be facing this coming battle together. No, we can't be physically by your side or at your side or backing you up, but with God, I certainly hope and I believe that there are others around you that will be backing you up. People you may not know right now, or people that you might have just introduced either to the truth of what's going on, maybe via this program or Alex Jones or some other program. Who knows? I mean, whoever you listen to. We're all here for a reason. We got a battle to fight, folks. Let's get our heads in the battle. Let's get intellectually and spiritually and physically, if possible, ready. Because we need to be strong. Joe, I think I cut you off mid-sentence there. I didn't mean to do that.
No, that's fine. And I don't even remember what I was going to say here. But looking at what you were getting into earlier, I know we got about 10 minutes before the top of the hour, the geopolitics of World War III. There's a few interesting news items today. One is from WolfStreet.com. This is global monetary power shifts from dollar. China stakes claim, rescues currencies of Argentina and Russia. Now, I guess we should start by talking about what's going on with Russia in their economy. I'm not sure if you saw this article yesterday or heard this. The inflation rate was in December for the ruble, but it exceeded 10% in December on ruble's decline. Russia's inflation exceeded 10% for the first time in more than 5 years, spurred by sanctions and the worst ruble collapse since 1998. Consumer prices increased 10.4% this December through the 22nd. The Federal Statistics Service in Moscow said today that through an emailed statement, prices grew 0.9% in the week through the date, most since April of 2008 when the service started to provide weekly data.
Well, and here's the kicker with Russia. As it was, and this is the key, Benghazi was going to expose or should have exposed. You see hearings, the Senate Committee on Benghazi is, of course, in session and going strong. And, of course, they're going to come out with some lame BS, sorry to use that on Christmas, but saying, well, it's security and diplomatic security. Oh, give me a break. Here's the deal with Russia and what Joe just said with respect to the inflation, the ruble. Folks, what you're seeing today, right now, is exactly what we saw prior to December 7th, 1941. We are seeing actions, very aggressive actions by the West. When I say that, I'm talking about what the United States did to Japan. I'm saying to you that we're doing the same to Russia as we did to Japan in pre-World War II days. Understand this. The oil, 68% of Russia's total export revenues in 2013, almost 70%, was oil and natural gas. Oil and natural gas sales accounted for nearly 70% of Russia's total export revenues in 2013, last year. Now, having said that, go now, well, not right this minute, look at the price of a gallon of gas. Oh, and rejoice, because we've got cheap gas. But at what cost? You see that we're poking the bear here, and this is well, this is actually already, we're into World War III right now, through the people either want to lift up Putin and say he's the greatest thing, or demonize him and Russia and say they're evil communists. Meanwhile, we look the other way when it comes to communist China, because we've sold out wholesale by the traitorous NAFTA gang, the Clinton China gang, the Robert Rubin gang, all of this, and all of the people who fled to, all of the corporations who fled to China sold out their country. We've sold out to China, and of course, it's always been communist and still is communist, but yet you don't hear word one about. When's the last time you heard China called Red China? When's the last time you heard China called Communist China? It's all Russia. Ooh, bad. You see the games that are being played upon us right now? Folks understand what's happening here. We are in the early throes of World War III right now. And if you don't see it, if you don't believe it, well, there's always reruns of Gilligan's Island on, I suppose. Or whatever the show is of the day. Dancing with the Stars or whatever, right? You can do that. Or if your neighbor doesn't want to hear it, or if your Uncle Ned doesn't want to hear it at the table. Oh, by the way, if you did bring us to the table and Uncle Ned or whatever his name is with you, slide the listening device closer to his ear. Because Uncle Ned, we're talking to you now. We're in the early throes of World War III. See, template from World War II, FDR, the oil embargo against Japan. It's the same thing being done to Russia through sanctions. All right. And of course, look at Zuckerberg sucking up to China. Look at everything that's going on, folks. 2015, next year, will be a year of dramatic change. Dramatic change, we believe.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of this. What we saw with the, we have, I don't know what you found, if anything, on the Sony hacking, the interview movie.
Oh, yeah.
There was an article in the Daily Beast saying, no, North Korea didn't hack Sony. Well, today, PlayStation Network as well as Xbox Live were apparently hacked through DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks, and much of the service was taken down for the day. Taking credit for this takedown was a group called the Lizard Squad, but the network status page for Xbox Live and PSN both list their networks as offline throughout most of the day. And, these cyber attacks that we've seen, I think these are going to be a lot more prevalent in 2015. You're going to see a lot more internal, government type facilities, possible heating, energy facilities that are protected networks, water treatment plants, targets, hospitals too. As we read on Tuesday, we read an article that the healthcare industry, as they continue to move more towards electronic health records, are becoming soft targets. And I think it was around 40 million last year hospitals or electronic health records were hacked last year. And they say, the article was from Wired Magazine saying 2015 was going to be the year of the hack. I believe that to be true, as this is not serving a purpose for what we're being told that's being done. They say North Korea was behind the Sony hack, and a lot of people, including myself, first and foremost, do not understand the language, the computer language, the cybersecurity or computer lingo. I mean, I don't know how to couldn't tell you how to hack my dad's computer, and he's sitting right next to me. I could plug something into it. Right. Well, I'm saying I guess I'm going to have to get more educated on how these cyber attacks work, because this seems to be, as everything is moving, we're moving towards an e-commerce. We're moving more towards the internet for shopping and different things that we used to do ourselves that without the internet. Our bank records, people do a lot of people do online banking, etc. And all these different areas that are out there in the cyber world are going to be up for the hack. What can be the biggest hack of 2015?
And what we're going to be doing, in addition to guiding you through the nuances of the road to World War III as the program unfolds, is to get into the Sony hack. We've done a lot of research on this, and I'll tell you one thing. It was December 19th of this year where the FBI issued a press release stating that it, and I quote, it had enough information to conclude that the North Korean government is responsible, and I'm ending the quote there, for the Sony Pictures hack. Really. You see, you really don't need to be a conspiracy theorist to see that blaming North Korea is extremely convenient for the FBI and extremely convenient for this renegade in chief. It's a perfect excuse, and here's what's behind it. But it's even more than this, but here's what's behind it. It's really the perfect excuse to push through whatever draconian cyber laws the renegade in chief and this band of thieving, traitorous, is that a word? Traitorous lawmakers deem fit. Because, you see, they needed to get your attention. Because what's Hollywood? Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. Not my words, but those of Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. Because what is Hollywood? Separate that. Holly and wood, it's a tool of the occult. And all of this is building to a crescendo, a huge crescendo, that will impact us all in 2015. Folks, you're listening to the Christmas edition of the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report. I'm Doug Hagmann in the studio with my son Joe Hagmann, coming to you. If you're alone, hey, you're not alone. We're with you. Edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. During the break, you heard the song Doubts by Bertane Duckworth. If you want more information or if you want to listen to the entire song, just go to HagmannandHagmann.com under our show there under the main menu. There's a drop-down menu, and of course you can click on the bumper music and listen to the entire song. Bertane Duckworth, he's a good friend of the program, musician, great artist, and we just love his stuff. And if you just joining us, our first hour, we started out with a Christmas story, heartwarming, uplifting Christmas story about George, the old man George, in the service station. And that's how we started. And of course, we laid the groundwork during the first hour for the rest of the program. And during the break, Joe and I were talking about a few things that we need to cover the second hour with respect to the road to World War III. And if you're joining us, again, if you're joining us late, I just want to extend our thanks. I want to thank you for your support. It could have been an email that you sent, because we read all of them. Sometimes we can't, the volume is such that it's difficult to respond to everyone. It could be a letter that you wrote. It could be a note that you wrote and sent. It could be your financial support. Thank you for that. That keeps us, pays our bills, keeps us on the air. It could be your word of mouth recommendation of our program to someone else. And you just never know how this will affect the things. And I'm convinced a combination of the 5 Sunday shows that we did with Pastor David Langford and Steve Quayle back well over a year ago now, I'm convinced that those shows certainly did a lot to, the Sunday programs did a lot to spiritually accelerate the movement against Syria, in terms of against invading Syria by this rogue element of the CIA and the administration and the State Department. Convinced of that. But we find ourselves now facing, in the Middle East, and we find ourselves now facing a different kind of front, a Western-backed intelligence front known as ISIS. Got McCain in there, hugging, bellying up to the bar with ISIS people. Go figure, right? You got the both parties, really members of both parties, tacitly or actively agreeing to support these maniac monsters, and you've got an agenda to topple Syria, much like Libya was toppled. And think back to the comments about the 7 countries that were going to be invaded, and Joe mentioned during the break about the importance of the central banks in all of this. Yeah. Joe, I think that it's, if you want to talk about that, because I think that's very important.
Yeah, first I want to say hello to Terry, who's listening via phone as her internet is out. Merry Christmas to you, and thanks for tuning in. Even with the internet out, I was just listening by phone. We appreciate that. But yeah, the central bank aspect of this Cuba deal, and through the problems we see in the Middle East, the regime change, we had, I believe it was 7 countries without a central bank in 2003, 2002. And I'm pulling up some information here now to make sure I have my facts correct. But there are Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Iraq, North Korea, Iran, Cuba were at the year 2000 were the list of countries that did not have a central bank implemented in their government banking system. Now, this article goes on to say it's not a coincidence that these countries, which are listed above, were under attack by the Western media and more in the last few years. We've seen regime change in an all-out war against Iraq and Afghanistan through the Patriot Act and the actions of George Bush after the 9/11 attacks, or in response to the 9/11 attacks. Libya, we had, and the Sudan. I'm sorry, that's another one. Libya, Sudan are 2 countries that are in the throes of violence. Libya overthrew President Muammar Gaddafi, Hillary Clinton's Secretary of State. What'd she say? We came, we saw.
And he died, or
and he
something
died.
like that. Very, very smugly, I might add, and typical of by definition, a sociopath.
Yeah, so after 2003, after Iraq and Afghanistan, there was only these countries left without a central bank: Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. Now, Iraq and Afghanistan obviously had central banks implemented after the invasion in the U.S. over there. Now there's just 3 countries left: Cuba, North Korea, Iran. And what the president did with Cuba, I believe, opened the door to them implementing a central bank.
Who?
What the president did with Cuba, what the renegade in chief did in Cuba, I believe opens the doors, and we will see this country knocked off the list very shortly. Now, at least North Korea and Iran, who are the 2 biggest enemies in geopolitics in the Western world, at least.
How many guesses do we get on this?
I guess, as many as you want, but just out of today's media, what do you see? Iran is demonized a lot, and rightfully so sometimes, from a lot of what they say and their leaders say on the world stage, but also for their nuclear ambitions, which were highly criticized by all countries and think tanks. Yet,
and Joe, people are confused about that too, because they're saying, well, Iran can't have the nuke because they're going to strike. They could strike Tel Aviv and Israel, and I believe that to be the case. But see, here's where the disconnect is, in my estimation. You go back to the mid 20th century. Go back to the 50s. Look at the regime changes that the CIA, our intelligence, Western intelligence, did in Iran. Look at the meddling we did. So we have allowed to, if we fast forward to present day, we've set up Iran. I mean, we are going to conquer Iran, and when I say we, I shouldn't say we. The globalists intend to conquer Iran, and making them or putting them in a position, setting them up, allowing them to get to this. So we're going to have to do something. When I say we, I'm talking about the globalist-led Illuminati, Satanist, bad people. I mean, so it's all a big setup. It's all orchestrated. Are they bad? Absolutely. Do they want to see the Imam Mahdi come in? Absolutely. Are they worshiping a moon god? Absolutely. Are they bad people? Absolutely. But we created them, or at least helped in a super big way. So that's what that's about. But yes, it's about money. And you see all of this is interconnected. The Sony hack, the North Korea situation, Hollywood, the occult of Hollywood.
Yeah,
all of this is...
I don't think we talked about this last show we did, but I came across a document that talked about the computer graphics technology and news reports. They say by the year 2015 you will be unable to distinguish between computer graphic generated fake news broadcasts and real ones. You would be unable to tell the difference between there would be put out there messages of something a foreign leader said, or even the president said, we'll say, that was created by a computer, and this person never said it. And I believe this goes for more than just leaders. I believe it goes for any leader in any part of any community that is looking to be demonized for whatever reason. But they were talking about this like it hasn't already been the case for a while now. I mean, are we not at the time where we're unable to tell the difference between real and doctored news reports based on how they're reported and who created them and for what purpose? Are we not already seeing questionable? I mean, the biggest one I remember is the CNN footage. Was it the Gulf War CNN footage that was faked, where you can go find the YouTube videos of the CNN anchors up on the roof of the headquarters in Atlanta, pretending to be in the middle of Iraq, an Iraqi war zone, putting on helmets with fake sirens and the whole 9 yards. I mean, it looks horrible now, but when, looking back at what else, it's hard to tell a difference. But they say that there's going to come a time when not only will there be an inability to distinguish between real or false generated video clips, they said they would also have, U.S. soldiers committing war crimes that never really happened. So that speaks to the extent of what they say they can do. But they talk about this, Hollywood-style computer graphic generated images and movies that will be false, that will be indistinguishable from the truth. And that really stuck with me there because, I just think of all the different questionable, from 9/11 and all the events till now that have been picked apart and criticized. Some say they're false flags, others say that they're, fakes completely. I mean, have they not been testing this and perfecting this using this to perfection already? I mean, I think we're at a point where they could and have thrown out false news reports, doctored news reports, and created news reports with fake video. I mean, just look at the Osama bin Laden alleged death. They threw a couple pictures up there of some guy with a beard resembling Osama bin Laden in a blanket, and that was about it. That was, the American people really didn't have too many questions after that. I mean, there's hundreds of examples I guess we could go through. But we're coming into a time where not only distinguishing truth from fiction, or good from evil, is coming that much harder. We need to understand that we're in this time, and that these people have these technologies and have the ability to not only create false news information, but just like the Bible says, Satan will masquerade as an angel of light. So everything that is right is wrong, and everything that's wrong that is right, and they can create any situation or project any type of power or trickery, and we won't know the difference or who's really behind those powers.
If I can, I mean, television, you had mentioned the Gulf War scenario, the CNN. Television is a most powerful weapon, well, the most perhaps powerful weapon of psychological warfare in the history of the planet. The programming that constantly bombards us throughout our lives, it conditions us. It programs us to a particular worldview. It traps us inside this box of this worldview. And anything outside of that box, you're a conspiracy freak. Oh, you're a doom porn purveyor of fear and seller of fear. You want to sell your gold or silver, oh my goodness, or you want the hits on your website, or you want to be some. Yeah, that's what television does. It conditions us. It programs us. It keeps us boxed in. Not just television, but all mass media, Illuminati-controlled mass media. It's a mass conditioning of the mind. It is, well, look, we may consider it normal television, this programming. We may consider it normal because most of us were born into this system of lies and deception, and because we were born into this situation, and our parents were born into it even, most likely, they've suffered from it as well. And together, we don't know any better unless you look outside of the box. You see Hollywood. Isn't it interesting? And maybe this is a slight digression. I don't think much, but you see the headlines in the news about Sony, the hack. Oh, my goodness. Sony in Hollywood. Actually, it's a Japanese company, but it really got the attention of Hollywood and old George Clooney out there all up in arms because North Korea, of course, is a culprit. Well, is it really? Isn't Hollywood the occult, the master of illusion? And again, I'll just quote Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. Is that what this is all about? It's a mass deception of every one of us. It's a lie. We're being gamed, and we've been deluded into thinking, well, at best, if you look at it, most people today will shake their heads at the programs and say, oh, it's just a purveyor of immorality and just dysfunctional and all that. But is it really? Oh, no. Hollywood, it's an illusion. It's the purveyor of this occult illusion. It is a tool of those people that are controlling your mindset. It's a conspiracy indeed. It's a way to lead. It's a way for Satan to lead the masses into, well, into hell, I suppose, because of how they or led us to accept this barrage of lies from the government, from the media, from corporations, from even science and public education. And our vision of this of the world as it is has been absolutely skewed from the way it really is. And you know, I'm a fan of space, A View from Space on Toronto every Saturday night, and he says that Hollywood has become the really the truth tellers in a way, and the news is more of a fictionalized account. But the messages are getting out. The illusions, the schemes, the plots, the plans are being telegraphed via Hollywood. That's why we have Nathan Leal on, for example. It's all an illusion from the situation Joe was talking about to Colin Powell. How powerful was that? Or go back to the Gulf War that Joe was talking about. How powerful was that testimony from that young unnamed girl saying, I witnessed, and crying, I witnessed the Iraqi soldiers taking the babies out of incubators and putting them on the cold, hard floor, left to die, and taking the incubators. Remember the visions if you're old enough. Seems like it was just yesterday, but if you're old enough to remember that, it was all a lie. She was a daughter of a Kuwaiti ambassador. And it's all a lie, purveyed by the people in Hollywood and controlled by the mass media, by a half a dozen corporations owned by probably maybe twice as many powerful people. It's a small group. And as George Carlin used to say, you're not in that group. That's what this is all about. But the Sony hack, and I just want to touch on this and toss it back to you, Joe. But isn't it interesting that the Sony hack, North Korea didn't hack Sony? No. Isn't it interesting that all of a sudden you can now download or buy for what, $5.99 via Google? I suppose isn't that what it is, Joe? Via Google, $5.99, you can watch the interview. I wonder what the receipts are on that. Now that everyone is scrambling to watch the interview through pay-per-view.
I have no plans on watching that movie. Do you?
Oh no, I don't. But I know a half dozen people who told me they already did.
Yeah, I believe that this was a multi-purpose agenda, but one of the whether they thought this movie was going to flop or not, I don't know if that was the reason behind what they did, but they certainly gave it a huge amount of publicity, and then went from flip-flopping, saying that it wasn't going to be released, and now it's not only being released in certain theaters, I believe today and tomorrow it's being played, but it's also available on disc, and like you said, they made it available across the internet spectrum to people who had the ability to buy it via the internet, and I think that saved them if that movie was planning on being a flop. I saw a critic saying, less than 50% of critics said it was a good movie worth seeing. Some other statistics, 73% of people who saw it that weren't critics said it was a good movie or gave it a thumbs up. But
it's not even about the movie. It's about the collateral damage caused by the movie. It's about the axis of evil. Remember that, George W. Bush, the axis of evil, North Korea. And of course, North Korea is a nation state of who? Of China. And what do we see in this path, in this road that we're on to World War III? It's coming down the pike here very quickly. We're seeing Russia now cozying up to China because why? It's over it's over money. It's over money. It's over cash. It's over value. It's over mana. That's what's going on here. Because as I mentioned earlier, and folks, let me just say this again, you've got to understand, in the scheme of things, enjoy that gas at the pump that you're putting into your vehicles because it's low. But oil and natural gas sales account for a whopping 70% of Russia's total export revenues last year. That's what, and it's basically the same this year. Well, what's going on there? Well, Russia and China are making deals, but then if you look at China, look at their economy, look at everything, look at the empty cities, look at the millions of empty luxury or empty condos and apartment buildings and apartment complexes and storefronts in China. economy is not doing well, as neither is Russia's economy. And the West has a lot to do with that. Of course, our involvement in Ukraine is dead center with that too. With the IMF, the globalists, we went into Ukraine. First ones on the ground, the IMF, backed by the CIA. Well, you know what? Think back to this, folks, and I'll just leave it this way. As we prodded our way into the Arab Spring, and we were destabilizing countries left and right, and that affected Russia. Go back to May of 2010. Remember the flash crash? Somebody with a fat finger must have pushed a button. That crash of May of 2010. Remember that? It wasn't an attack by Russia. You don't think, right? Kind of a tit for tat kind of thing, right? So all of this is nothing but an illusion, one that's going to bite us. Because you see the road to World War III, the reason Russia and Syria, the reason they're being targeted right now, there is this really shadowy cocktail of money and geopolitics right now taking place. When you see the mushy mouthpieces of the globalist elite begin to demonize a foreign country, there's one question that should always be front and center in your mind. What's going on here? What's actually at stake here? Well, you know, Joe, and for some time now, Russia, China, Iran, Syria, specifically Syria, they've been in the crosshairs of the globalist elite, backed by the Western intelligence and the CIA. You got to understand why. Once you understand why the events that you see take place right now in the world are going to make much more sense to you. Don't forget, and Joe, we were talking about this before the show. Think of the U.S. dollar. The globalists want to establish a global currency, so they want to kill off the U.S. dollar. And they're also manipulating the precious metals market. Everything is manipulated, from the GDP numbers to the unemployment figures to every number you can think of coming out of Washington is nothing but a big fat lie. But think about the dollar. Think about the history of the dollar. You know, it's been the world's reserve currency since Bretton Woods, since 1944. Now, other currencies held that same status off and on over decades and even centuries, but since the early 70s, the U.S. dollar has been, with a few notable exceptions, really the only currency used to buy and sell oil on the global market, but that's changing now, right? And don't forget, before 1971, well, the U.S. dollar was bound to the gold standard, at least kind of, sort of, and somewhat, because according to the IMF, by 1966, if you go back to 1944 through 1966, we were bound at least to somewhat of a relatively stable gold standard. But in 1966, the numbers came out, and lo and behold, the foreign central banks, well, they held $14 billion U.S. dollars. And how much gold did we have, Joe, during that time? Only $3.2 billion in gold. That was allocated to the foreign holdings. That's $3.2 billion. So, do you think we were about maybe, $10 billion short? See, the Fed, the privately owned Federal Reserve, was printing more money than it could actually back, and the result was rampant inflation and a flight from the U.S. dollar. So in 1971, Nixon got on the air on a Sunday night, interrupting Bonanza and hacking off a lot of people, because he interrupted Bonanza, and he took the dollar off the gold standard totally and completely, wiped it off. Thus, it became the pure debt-based currency it is today, meaning that you just print it, magically it's there. You see, right now there's about 70% of our money in circulation, or about 70% of our money in circulation is really created by ordinary banks. They're allowed to loan out more than they actually have in their accounts. That's called fractional reserve lending. And the rest, well, it's created by the Federal Reserve. They loan out money that they don't have, mostly to our government. So if you and I did that, we'd be arrested for cutting checks. See?
Well, yeah, this is what they do. They create money out of thin air, and the interest is created. Therefore, not only is the initial money lent out paid back, but also a premium on that lending of the money. And this is where a lot of the people inside this system will call, this is where they say the magic is created, through the interest. You notice the United States government doesn't pay on the deficit, it pays on the interest of the deficit. And that's not by accident. The interest on the deficit is, I mean, these people want the deficit to go higher and higher. Why? Because the higher the debt is, the more the interest to pay for that debt costs.
Exactly. Now let's throw some geopolitical things into here. Remember OPEC. Remember back in the 70s, the gas lines, the crisis. Sure, Joe, no, you don't remember that, but I do. This is 1973, under the shadow of the artificial OPEC oil crisis. What did Nixon do? Kissinger. You see, Nixon began secret negotiations with Saudi Arabia to establish what later came to be referred to, and folks, please remember this, and you can even research this yourself, the petrodollar recycling system. Let me say that again. It was back in 1973, amid the artificial OPEC oil crisis, that the Nixon administration, via Kissinger and others, really, but Kissinger, the globalist that he was and is, he began these secret negotiations with the government of Saudi Arabia and established what is now referred to as the petrodollar recycling system. And what this is, really simple. You can look this up, folks. You can search this. Remember, and we're going to be enforcing this big time in 2015. Google is not a verb. You can search this petrodollar recycling system, because under this arrangement, under this agreement, that compelled, or this agreement said that the Saudis would only sell their oil, in U.S. dollars. And what they would also do is they'd take the majority of their profits and put it into U.S. banks and other capital markets, and then the IMF would use this money to facilitate loans to oil importers who were having difficulties covering their increase in oil prices. You see, the payments and interest on these loans, as you stated, Joe, would, of course, be denominated in U.S. dollars. And you pulled up this agreement earlier, Joe. It was actually spelled out in something, and you can research this as well. Folks, search this as well. It was really inked. The deal was inked in the document known as the U.S.-Saudi Arabian Joint Commission on Economic Cooperation. Again, authored by Henry Kissinger, a globalist. In fact, at that time, if you think back, or if you go back, and you can also consider this, U.S. military was on standby at the time, and the U.S. was actually thinking, well, maybe we can just take these oil fields of Saudi Arabia by force, because CIA actually created Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, way back in the early 20th or mid 20th century, I should say, the predecessor to the CIA.
Yeah,
but
it goes on to state that the oil shocks produced inflation and new concerns about foreign investment from oil-producing countries, and the open speculation about the feasibility of militarily seizing these oil fields from Saudi Arabia or other countries. In the wake of the embargo, both the Saudi and U.S. officials worked together on a new bilateral relationship on the basis of a shared opposition to communism. And what they did is, through this shared renewed military cooperation and through economic initiatives, promoted the recycling of the U.S. petrodollar to the U.S. via Saudi investments in infrastructure, industrial expansion, and U.S. securities. It expanded to include the rest of OPEC by 1975.
Yeah, 1975. You know, what all this did, and in order to understand where we're going, we got to kind of look back at where we've been and who brought us to this point, right? I mean,
yeah. So we went from what to what?
Well, we went from this system that was the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency, but was backed by at least gold, now to a dollar that's backed by oil. And look what's happening to oil now. In addition, where we are now, we're supposedly enjoying low oil prices. And you'll hear on the news, Brian Williams, it's because of this glut in oil. Well, really? Okay. Well, this, you see, as we mentioned earlier, it's an economic attack against Russia. This is war against Russia. And I suppose by extension, by all of Russia's proxy states, and even to some extent against China. Because we got to get we have to get the one world government in place. But what all this did, and this is a backdrop to it, by removing us off of the gold standard, we now could, the Fed could increase the money supply whenever they doggone felt like it. And, of course, our continuing demand for oil, and not just ours, but the world's demand for oil, now that we got locked up in U.S. dollars anyway, trade, would just perpetuate this Ponzi scheme, right? Well, now you've got countries that are backing away from the petrodollar. Wasn't Ukraine, perhaps, in addition to the economy and others, the oil? I mean, think about Ukraine, too. We went in there. The IMF and the CIA went into Ukraine, destabilized Ukraine, and by doing so, took out, I believe it was Yanukovych. I can't remember if that's the correct name or not, correct president, but that was cooperative with Russia to replace the leadership with a individual who was more sympathetic to the West, and that cut off or had the ability to cause trouble for the oil exporting through Ukraine into Europe. So what do you have? You've got these attacks against Russia, not just in Ukraine, but also against Russia in Syria, where they've got extremely high, extremely important, vital military interests and economic interests. Put it all together. And understand, too, the backdrop of all this unusual, weird hack job from Sony, who does that benefit? Or who does that demonize? And understand all of this is being mixed in this big cauldron of illusion and being transmitted or allowed to steam out through your TVs and your radios by these people who have been bought off for a potential seat at the world globalist table. They're traitors. And that's kind of how the U.S. economy has been taking us off of the gold standard. That's kind of how the U.S. economy is, or how the Fed's been able to perpetuate this Ponzi scheme for the last how many decades, and how everything's been able to kind of fly by here.
Now, I want to
stand for so long. Go ahead.
Ask you a question, I guess. This is going back to the document I read that talked about the news power, or the fake news broadcast in the future. It also talked about the United States' ability to project power versus its ability in real power. Are we projecting power by keeping the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency, as the petrodollar? I saw somebody in chat comment, the petrodollar is backed by the barrel of a gun. And that's pretty much,
bingo.
Yeah. So are we projecting?
Yes. It's a symbiotic relationship between the really assures the free and unrestricted and uninterrupted flow of oil from the oil fields to the end user. Hence the petrodollar. But the petrodollar goes down. There's no military to back it. So it's a symbiotic relationship to that extent.
Are soldiers going to fight on the battlefield when the U.S. dollar is collapsed and there's no method of payment for them?
Well, that's a great, interesting question. I wonder if there's anything going to be left that will be left to be fighting for at that point, given the course that we're on. And if you look at it, look at the U.S. dollar. Okay, for right now, as long as there is a petrodollar in existence, and as long as every country in the world, or every civilized country in the world, needs oil and gas, and as long as oil is only sold in U.S. dollars, there's always going to be a demand for dollars. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what gives the dollar its value. Now, this is just a super-duper deal for the Fed, isn't it? Because money goes out, backed by really nothing, as debt instruments or instruments of debt. The dollar goes out either by way of computer or paper, whatever. And tangible, actual products come in. But for the rest of the world, the rest of the world is being exploited by this process. And having global trade predominantly in U.S. dollars, it gives the Fed, it gives the Washington power brokers, it gives the globalist elite this weapon, this financial weapon through sanctions, which we're doing to Russia. You think Russia's going to take this? Oh, they've taken it so far. Look at how the West demonized, for example, Russia. And again, I'm not putting Putin on a pedestal or anything, or Russia on a pedestal, but Sochi Olympics, you don't go there. You might, there's terrorism there. Could be terrorism. Might not make it. Flights might get bombed out of the sky. Gerald Celente talks about that, I think, on this last interview with Alex Jones. But also remember that as soon as Sochi, I mean, the Russians were held at bay by Saudi Arabia, who said, you know what, we can let the terrorists go or restrain the terrorists. It's up to you. Vlad, here's the deal. You play ball with us, and we'll make sure nothing happens, and the Olympics go off as planned. But if you don't play ball, then we're just going to unleash hell of Islamic terrorism on your butt. Putin didn't take too kindly to that, remembered that, and of course now he's coming out, and we told you this last year, we told you this earlier this year, he was going to come out swinging, and swinging he is. So, and Joe, what you said too, remember Saddam Hussein announced that he was going to be moving away from the dollar, right? Remember PNAC, you always quote PNAC, the Project for a New American Century. And Dick Cheney just coincidentally was a member of PNAC, and they released that document that you often cite, Rebuilding America's Defenses. The way is it, strategy, forces, and resources for a new century. Well, that document itself called for increase in military spending and a more aggressive foreign policy any way possible. And one of the paragraphs, and I think you had said, well, you know, this could take a while, except this could take a while, barring anything like a Pearl Harbor event. Well, that was in 2000, and what happened a year later, 9/11, right? So Bush then invaded Afghanistan and Iraq and passed the Patriot Act. Was there any outcry in America? Hell no. No. And hell no. There was no cry. And remember all the visuals after 9/11 on television. All the visuals. Colin Powell with a little vial of anthrax, right? Destruction. Well, if you go back in history, you can go back in 1994, and you can see Dick Cheney on the newscast. This is right after the Gulf War, or Desert Storm. You go back and see the newscast and Cheney being interviewed, and newscaster saying, "Well, why didn't you go all the way to Iraq or all the way to Baghdad?" And he said, "Well, that would have caused a power vacuum, and pieces of Iraq would have just destabilized Iraq immensely." Well, what would happen after that? What happened after 9/11? That is, we went into Iraq at the behest of, among others, a member of PNAC. Now, some of you might think, "Well, this is old news. My gosh, folks, it's the same playbook. It's the same playbook.
Same goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And you remember, right after Iraq, right after Bush invaded and the globalists invaded Iraq, they attempted to extend the war plans to Iran, of course. But look, we all know that D.C., inside the Beltway, these globalists, these murderous, traitorous people, took us into these wars. Well, D.C., their credibility took a hit based on the findings. And isn't it funny? You go back in time, folks, and you watch the press club, National Press Club, Bush. Oh, I can't find any weapons of mass. No, they're not under there. And people were laughing. And by the way, Iran, you can pick up on this, Joe, that since 2004, Iran has been attempting to organize, to get off the U.S., organize their own independent oil bourse. creating their own oil market, that was not going to be tied to the dollar. And, the first shipments of oil, well, they were sold through the independent oil bourse through this market in 2011. So what did the United States do? They used the authority of the United Nations to impose sanctions against Iran with the goal, the ever-familiar goal, of toppling the Iranian regime. Now, the sanctions hurt the Iranian economy, but you know what it didn't do? It did not succeed in destabilizing the country, or actually it didn't succeed really immediately, that is, in toppling the Iranian regime. But what it did do is bring Russia into the equation.
Yeah, and now reading an article on the latest over the ruble, Russia says their currency crisis is now over. Vladimir Putin saying that the ruble is now strengthening. Russia said on Thursday its currency crisis was over, even though its forex reserves have been plunged and annual inflation has climbed over 10%, adding to the problems facing the government as it fights its worst economic crisis since 1998. Goes on to say the ruble plunged to all-time lows last week on heavy falls in the price of oil, the backbone of the Russian economy, and also Western sanctions over the Ukraine crisis that made it ever impossible for Russia firms to borrow on Western markets. But it has since rebounded sharply after authorities took steps to halt its slide and bring down inflation, which after years of stability threatened the President Vladimir Putin's reputation for ensuring the country's prosperity. It goes on to say here that the Standard & Poor's credit rating agency said this week it could downgrade Russia to junk as soon as January due to rapid deterioration in monetary flexibility. But they said that in order to stabilize the situation on the currency market, that the period has already, in our opinion, passed. The ruble is now strengthening. That from Finance Minister Anton Siluvanov told the Upper House of Parliament on Thursday. It goes on to say that the ruble, they believe, will rise significantly more. The biggest deficit next year would be significantly more than the 0.6% of gross domestic product originally planned. But that they go on to say that this inflation spike was due to not only the sanctions but the downturn of oil prices, but through economic aid and other actions that the president took, that they're able to stabilize this spike in inflation now, and they're going to see a turnaround, they say. It could reach 11% by the end of the month, possibly. But they also say that, this is interesting, the Russian economic aid says that surpassing the psychologically key 10% mark for the first time since the 08-09 financial crisis.
Right.
Psychological key 10% mark.
Well, yeah. The interest in, and you have to look too. What did, I mean, how did that happen? First of all, how did the ruble tank like it did? And of course, that can be explained by the economic warfare, asymmetrical economic warfare by the West, including and especially the United States. But now Russia turns around and uses Gazprom neft. They're exporting maybe 100,000 tons of oil from one of their fields in the Arctic. It's only going to accept payment in rubles, and they're doing an end around the U.S. dollar. The Russian oil company Gazprom neft, they're doing an end around the U.S. dollars, accepting payment in rubles, and accepting payment in the yuan for the transfers. So this is like a grand chessboard. It's complicated, but simple in its design. This is a banker's war, and once again, as we had discussed, go back to World War II. Study the history leading up to World War II. What did we do to Japan, and then what happened after that? You see, do you think perhaps that there might be a shot across the, or do you think perhaps that we've been seeing shots across our bow? You think perhaps that Benghazi now, in that framework, Benghazi was an action that had direct ties to Russia through proxy states like Iran, Ansar al-Sharia, and other groups? Of course. So do you think we'll ever get the truth out of this Citizens Committee on Benghazi? No. You know why? Because because the CIA has infiltrated that group. For crying out loud. I think they're going to leave something this critical to the Citizens Committee on Benghazi? Why do you think you're getting wrong information? I think you're getting wrong information from even one of the most familiar faces on the alternative media, within the alternative media on television. That who's got a CIA operative advising him and his staff on matters of Benghazi. No, I'm not talking about Alex Jones. No. Someone more mainstream, yet not really mainstream. That's why. That's why we're not going to hear anything from the House Select Committee on Benghazi of any type of material importance.
Did you see on Steve's site today, and I didn't save this article, I'm going to go grab it again real quick, Cheryl Atkinson, I believe there's a story here, yes, Cheryl Atkinson talks about White House hiding photos of Obama the night of the Benghazi attack.
What did we say? What did we say?
Yeah, in an interview on C-SPAN's Washington Journal Tuesday morning, former CBS reporter Cheryl Atkinson revealed the photos taken by White House photographer taken the night of the Benghazi attacks have never been turned over. When asked about questions she wanted to see answered by the Benghazi Special Committee, she said she had a new list of questions which she intends on publishing. However, she says that the conflict regarding what Obama did that night still remains, and the photos might just give the story. That is, unless, as usual, the Obama White House is photoshopping them. And with that,
gee, you think? Do you think? Because see, if Americans knew what Obama was doing the night of Benghazi, if Americans knew where he was, remember the missing 13 and a half minutes of the Watergate tapes? Remember that? Remember the Rosemary Woods, in erasure, or what was it, 18 and a half minutes? I apologize. I've written about it. Remember that? See, if Americans knew what he was actually doing that night, there would be pitchforks and torches surrounding not just the White House, but Congress. We said this several times on air.
With that, we are at the top of the hour break. We're going to take that now, and we'll probably take your phone calls. You want to take some phone calls?
You know what? Let's lighten the mood here, and let's do that. Let's take your calls, and with priority given to those who might be alone. How can we tell that? We can't tell that, can we? Yeah, sure. We'll take some calls.
All right, we're going to take some calls when we come back on the other side. If you want to weigh in, the number is 661-244-9839.
Christmas edition, December 25th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagman in studio with my son, fellow investigator, researcher Joe Hagman. Together we are the Hagman Report. I just want to, once again, if you're joining us late, and I'd urge you to go back if you missed the first part of the program, to take a listen to that. And because we started off with a kind of an interesting, a very heartwarming story, and I think that we need this. But just a word to those who are suffering tonight, weary and tired, and impaired, infirmed, just understand that you're in our prayers. And if you've got no one, or think you've got no one, or you're lonely and alone, or just lonely, you're in our prayers. But know too that we've got to get strong, and you're an important part of our family, and we look at this as a family. No, not a cult, of course not, but a family of extended listeners, and a family of people who are intellectually aware and awake and are hungry for truth. Man, there's such a hunger for truth out there, but know that each and every one of you are so important to us and so important for the job at hand, because you were born for a time like this. You've got a purpose, and you might not know what that purpose is. Heck, we didn't even know what our purpose is. Well, I'm not sure we do know now. I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. We're doing what we think we've been told to do. We're trying to be obedient. We're trying to be good stewards, and that's why we're here tonight, as well as offer you hope and friendship and companionship and information along the way.
Let's go to the phones and hear from you guys. Once again, the number is 661-244-9839. We're going to go to area code 317 first. 317, you're up first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey. Do you guys hear me okay?
Sure.
Wow, I'm really thankful to be able to talk to you guys tonight. I appreciate you guys and your show. I've been listening to you for a while now, and finally had a chance to get through. A couple things
you did.
Yeah, thank you. A couple things that I wanted to maybe just give you food to think about and hear in upcoming shows would be, excuse me, some issues around like who the true tribe of Judah is and who the true Israelites are in the earth, and how deep the deception may go there in that case. I'm a little nervous.
It's just us talking.
I think there's a real possibility that the great delusion and the curse of the Most High on us is way broader than that we even know.
Well, when you say that,
I thought about that for a long time.
Yeah, and I've heard different. No, I've heard different versions of that. When you say that, and I have no doubt that the illusion that's upon us that we experience is much greater than even we understand. But when you bring the tribes of Judah into this, what are you saying? I mean, exactly. Are you going toward? What are you saying exactly?
Well, I mean, we know from our New Testament scriptures, such as Revelation, that there's 12,000 from each tribe to be gathered in the last days under the reign of the Messiah at that time. All right.
Okay.
Right,
yeah. Okay.
So at some point in the future, those tribes are going to be called back to the Most High, and the curses that those tribes were given in Deuteronomy and also in Genesis are still being played out over time, and that the ultimate focus of sort of the New World agenda and the ultimate goal in the sort of genocidal plans from the New World Order perspective is an attack on the people of Israel.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm not sure how you got from there to here, but that's okay because you got here. You got where you're at now. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So the people of Israel are still scattered abroad in the earth, and that the supposed Jewish state of Israel now is, in fact, Jewish people, which means Jew-ish, like they're not really the true bloodline of Judah in a sense, right? So that a lot of this prophecy that we're seeing being played out in front of us is really a staging to stage for the world Messiah that they're bringing, the Antichrist, the Anti-Messiah.
Okay, so what you're saying is
that a lot of the prophecy that we're engaged in terms of, Israel coming together and all of those things are really kind of part of the deception in order to lure us into one side of the dialectic, which is Christian versus everybody else. But when in reality the version of Christianity that we're following is really an orchestrated agenda of the pontiff of the Catholic Church.
Okay. I kind of see where you're headed with this, or I think I understand. Just a couple of things. Okay. You mentioned when we talk about Israel, we talk about Jerusalem. Israel. Just to clarify some things. Israel became a nation in the 14th century BC. Now that was, so think about that, 14th century BC. And since 1272 BC, the Jews have had dominion over the land for up to 1,000 years, with continuous Jewish presence in that land for really the past 3,300 years. And King David founded the city of Jerusalem, right? And so, okay. And okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Let me hear your question. I'm sorry.
Well, there's just a lot of information, biblical and historical data, that shows that Jews, the Jewish people, have not just historical, or not just biblical, but historical claims over the land called Israel, and not only that, over that trembling cup of Jerusalem, considering the fact that King David founded Jerusalem, and Jerusalem has been the Jewish capital of Israel.
Well, okay, I guess my question is at what point did the race of Jews from the tribe of Judah, who I believe were black people, become the white Jewish people we know in Israel today? I'm not suggesting that the Jews weren't a kingdom, but they fell and went into captivity because of following other gods other than the Creator. So,
okay, yeah, you're treading on some. You're on some thin ice here, because show me documentation, historical documentation, or where do you get that the race of, or the race of the original Jews were not Caucasian?
Well, Jacob was not considered a Caucasian. Esau was considered a Caucasian. In Mount Seir, that's the Caucasus Mountains, they were considered the Caucasians. Ultimately, it's the Edomite kingdom. So the Edomites then, in turn, became Greece and Rome, and consequently, the powers and the rulers of the earth essentially are the satanic religion that bloodline has been following.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And I understand where you're going with this, because a lot of this has been mixed. I get where you're going with this, but if we can agree, well, we'll just say this to find common ground, because this conversation could extend for a few days, actually.
You're absolutely right, and I'm not trying to I'm not actually even really trying to have a debate. I'm just trying to raise some questions that I have and find, some room in the conversation for this to be addressed, because as I listen to some of the Hebrew Israelite camps that are out there that are talking about the hidden history and the reality of what America was prior to 1492, prior to the European settling of the Americas, that, there was quite a, obviously a significant indigenous population here, but that many of them were, in fact, very black, as we would think of the Negro from West Africa.
Well, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to equate the situation with Native Americans, native to the physical continent of North America prior to the 1492. I understand that. But I think we've got sufficient, if not overly sufficient, historical data that shows where, it shows to me where and this is where we get into the term Palestine and Palestinians, and we talk about the indigenous Arab settlers who reportedly.
It's a very complicated thing, and I think that there's an underlying, it's the Psalm scripture. I can't recall the number right now. Says that David said that they were taking counsel to cut us off from being a people, from knowing who we are, from where we're from, and from what our background and history is. And if you look at what that cover-up means from the perspective of what the powers of the world are doing and what parts of history are actually covered up, as you well know that a lot of history is covered up, in terms of the Nephilim and the giants that were here in the land, and all of the cover-ups that go on within our own curatorial traditions here in the United States to cover that part of it up. Well, there's also a contention, at least a pretty good argument that I've heard made with pretty good scriptures backing it up, as well as historical documentation, that a lot of what we think of as our historical background has been changed at a certain point in time. And it has been whitewashed. That's in fact what the scripture says would do, is that they would whitewash the religion, basically, of God, of the Most High.
Okay, I understand. Your point's well made, and you're on record by making it. And it does give an alternative view of things, and we appreciate that. And thank you very much. I'll just say this: the masterful twisting of history. Just look at the word Palestine. They portray themselves as an indigenous Arab settlers. They adopted the name of an ancient Mediterranean tribe, the Philistines, which in the Hebrews, if you look in the scriptures, it's invaders in Hebrew. That disappeared over, about 3,000 years ago. So the connection between that tribe, which you may or may not be referencing in the modern-day Arabs, is really non-existent because it's died out over 3,000 years ago. But look, you're on record. Thank you. God bless, and have a Merry Christmas, my friend. Appreciate the call. Really do. Appreciate the call.
Thank you. We're going to go next to area code 772. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report tonight. What's on your mind?
Hi, guys. Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Tonight. I'm going to bullet point you. I'm not going to stay on one subject long. I was looking at the news, these guys that they arrested in New York for the gun smuggling. And I'm like, they were wrong. They broke the law. All fair and well. But I'm like, how dare they when you got Eric Holder shipping guns across the border and he doesn't get arrested? It's like above the law.
Absolutely. Fast and Furious, and it's interesting you bring this up because yesterday, the UN arms trade treaty went into effect. Small arms trade treaty went into effect, and this is what Fast and Furious is all about. At the regime level, at Holder's level, to attack the Second Amendment. And you're precisely correct. I'm trying to connect these two situations because Holder has shown that he's above the law. This regime has shown that they're above the law. It's not really about color. It's about actions, activity. It's about criminal activity. It's not about race. It's not. Although it's unfortunate that they're trying to make it about race. So
yeah,
yes,
I agree with you 100%. Not that it's not about the race. My point was, you arrest these guys for smuggling these guns from Atlanta to New York, but you got Eric Holder, they're smuggling guns as well.
Yeah,
and it's secret.
You're exactly right. Go figure. It's not do as we say, or it's not do as we do as we say. And this, of course, if they were on Holder's payroll or the government's payroll, they wouldn't have been arrested or popped like that. No, of course not. You've got to actually have a license to smuggle, with Holder's imprimatur. And if you don't, then you're actually competition, and of course you're going to get popped. And that's what we saw in New York.
Yeah,
well
and it really hurts my heart to see, my race, black people, just being used the way they are with all this. It's just crazy. And the ones that you can't even reach, you just change the conversation because it's like going nowhere. And but also, I'm go ahead.
No, I just want to make it really clear. White, Caucasian, I would feel. I mean, look, the the blacks in America have been dealt a very nasty card with respect to this. Seriously, if I was a black person in America today, I'd be really angry. I'd be really angry at the people who are really doing me as a black person, if I were, a disservice. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't even get angry. You got to sit back and you got to see where you're being played. I mean, it's not just black people that the police are killing. Look at the guy they shot down in New York, the camper. I mean, and they harp on Garner and Brown, but what about the guy that was shot down in Walmart? You don't hear much about this. I mean, you take something and you just hype it up even and you make it worse. And it's just, we shouldn't fight for anybody, whatever their race is, that's being brutalized and gunned down and killed like that for no reason, white or black.
Yeah.
Because we are the ones, American citizens are the ones that are under attack.
You're 100% correct, and I just have a lot of frustration about this because we know that the divisiveness, the division that's being caused, and you're right. I mean, it's really not really about race. They're making it about race, but they're also this is a business, or not a business. This is a tactic of divisiveness to take us down from within, and people have got to wake up and see the big picture, like yourself.
One more thing. I sent you guys an email. I was listening to Sean Anthony last week, Flow of Wisdom, and he had a reporter on there, and she really exposed some stuff about what was really going on in Africa with the Ebola thing and the contracts that have been given out to these truckers that are not Guineas. And she said that the Guineas, they have their trucks, the drivers, the expertise to put these supplies out over Africa, but another company has come in and they got $1 million a month contracts. I mean, very interesting. I mean, she really broke some things down, even about Gaddafi, how he wasn't as evil as they claim, how he really wanted to help the African people, and it was just so eye-opening. And I thought, thank you, Steve Quayle, because he said that God said that before it's over, that God would expose the sins of our leaders to us. And it was very enlightening, the report that she gave on his show. But
okay, I'm going to have to check out the archives on that as well.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well,
God bless you, Mike.
That's pretty much all I want to say. And one more thing, I typed in the Big Valley, and I watched season 1, episode 1, Palms of the Plans or something, and how the thinkers were trying to come in and take the farmers' land, and all the farmers, Heath, Nick, Jerry, everybody stood up with them, and they had this big gunfight. And I'm like, where are the men in America now? But anyway, God bless you guys, and y'all have a good one.
God bless you, dear. Thank you so much. And I didn't mean to. Hopefully you don't mind me calling you dear. I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine.
All right. God bless you. Merry Christmas. And
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call. All right, let's go to area code 402. 402. We're going to come to you now. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report.
Doug and Joe, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, too.
I just want to say that I have to give a review of the interview, the movie. I watched I purchased the movie, and I watched about 40% of it, and it's a lot of garbage. I would not recommend it to anyone. It's
well, you're actually insulting the U.S. Department of State, because the U.S. State Department did have a editorial and production hand in that movie. So you're naughty. I'm going to tell.
Well, the whole thing, the whole premise, the premise is understandable, but the whole application of it, it's just stupid. It's just very, very dumb. And I purchased it and probably watched the end of it, but is this what we have to show? And the whole movie is F this, F that, F this, F that, and I don't find that very appealing. And I don't know.
Well, with the limited vocabulary of this of our generation, when I say our generation, perhaps my generation as well as the subsequent generations, I would say that everything is a foul and meaningless expletive, and it's sad. But looking at this, do you think that movie, or even the threat of that movie, could have inspired a hack from North Korea, from what you saw?
Well, no. It may be the greatest publicity stunt ever. I don't know.
Could be. It very could well be. I'd like to see the gross receipts after this is all said and done, but I do think it's multi-level.
Well, I was suckered in.
Well, I know half a dozen people that were here on my end too. So, yeah, I don't know. It's Hollywood. It's all illusion, and the lie is so big and it's different at every level. So we've got to understand that we're being gamed.
Hagmans, God bless, and please keep it up for the new year.
Got some exciting things coming in the new year, and we will. God bless you, my friend. Thanks for the call.
All right. Bye-bye.
And bye-bye.
Good night.
And Joe, I got to tell you, we do have the best. Seriously, we have the best listening audience in the world. We don't screen calls, and it's interesting how things have really. I just want to say, I got an email from someone, and I'm not going to share the details. I'm not going to do that. I just want to say, just to Karen, you know who you are, you know what you went through, and you know what you're living with, and you know how bad things are, and how you feel, and I know that this time of year has got to be just really rough, just totally rough. And I know that that the effect. I mean, look, I know someone very close to me, not situation not unlike yours, and it's a really a difficult road. It's a difficult path, but you know something? You will grow stronger. I promise you. And I apologize to the listening audience, other than Karen, but I think it's important enough to let Karen know that we understand and that we're with you. And you know, I'm not going to be trite and say, well, everything happens for a reason. Really? No. What I'm going to just say is that having known someone close to me, similar to your situation, from what I understand of it, you've really got to rely heavily on your faith. And you've got to really know that there are good, solid people out there, and you've got to find somebody that will help you and be with you. And we're trying to fill that void, at least for kind of, sort of, right now. So, Karen, look, we're with you. We love you. We don't know you, but and it sounds rather strange to say that to someone that you don't know, but in a way, we kind of do know you. Maybe, perhaps, better than others know you. I just want to say God bless, and you know what? We'll be praying for you. Our prayers will, you'll have our prayers. We'll have a whole lot of people praying for you by the end of the night. Guarantee you.
All right, let's go to area code 303. 303, thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report.
Yeah, hi, Doug and Joe. How you doing tonight? Merry Christmas. This is Bill from Colorado. And,
hey, Bill from Colorado.
I'm here, and, I don't know about the other people that are here at Christmas time with, well, for me, there's just the four of us here tonight. It's, Father, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and me. And but I've been having a Christmas party and a birthday party all day long. And, to those others who are out there, other brothers and sisters that are, quote, unquote, by themselves, we're never by ourselves. We're always right there, and Jesus is always with us. And, it's like many times, it's like I had a couple of opportunities to go to other people's houses. People think, oh, poor Bill, we got to invite him over for Christmas. But, it's like I turned them down because I knew that to have a birthday party here with just the four of us, that, Father and Jesus, it says they're closer than a friend, closer than your brother. And to my brothers and sisters that are out there, that it's just you and Jesus and Father and the Holy Spirit, just talk to them, say, Jesus, let's party, let's have a birthday party. And, I just wanted to share that encouragement with other brothers and sisters that, during the holidays, they, live by themselves. And, we're never alone, And I know some of you that have family, you think, oh, I feel so bad for these people. But, as someone who just, I cherish the time, to have alone time with the Lord. And so that was, some thoughts I had for the group, So
it's very special to have that alone time, and that alone time can serve multiple purposes, and to be quiet in the Word and understand what you do at the level you do. That's more than most people experience in a lifetime. and more than a lot of people experience in a lifetime. So, amen to that.
Actually, I've got a quick testimony if you all want to hear it. Paul, he talks about, getting in touch with God and whatnot, and it's been such a blessing to me because it's a confirmation to me for, my life, because for the last, 35, 40 years, I've been seeking God and had a lot of really amazing experiences. But this latest experience was, I was in prayer one morning, and, and I'm not saying this to make people jealous, but, I get to spend a lot of time in prayer. And the one morning I had been, about 4 hours into my prayer time that morning, and I got a text message from a friend. And the text message was, please, all of you all pray for my mother. She's got a massive blood clot. And this blood clot, she's semi-conscious. She's scared to death. The surgeons say that they have to do emergency surgery right away, or else her life is going to pass. And while I'm in prayer, the Lord spoke to me. He says, you speak to that clot. And he says, you command that it dissolve immediately. And I spoke the words that the Lord was speaking through me, right? And so, and I continued in my prayer, and I knew that it had happened. And 30 minutes later, I get a follow-up text message from my friend, and he says, thank you all for your prayers. The surgeons were ready to go in, and they said the blood clot just disappeared, and they didn't need to do the surgery. And I thought, praise God, And this is the type of thing that Paul McGuire has been talking about. And maybe that's encouragement to other people that, God is no respecter of persons. And if we are available to God, he will use all of us. And, I've been having experiences where friends have been calling and saying, my friend has terminal cancer, be praying for him. And, and the prayers that we give up to God, God moves in a powerful way, and getting prayer confirmations and whatnot is just, it's just amazing,
Yeah, and I think that prayer, and folks, this is something Paul McGuire talks about, and other guests have talked about. Our DNA. We are made in God's image, of course, and our DNA and our blood. There's importance in both DNA and blood. But let's talk about DNA. When you're in prayer, the harmonics of your DNA are altered, and when you're in earnest prayer with God, and I believe, for lack of maybe a better, more complicated explanation, just think of your DNA vibrating and sending out electrical signals to God, and interdimensionally to God. That's why we talk about physics and the physics of the Bible, and quantum creation and quantum, multi-dimensions and all of that. Not in a New Age way, but in a way that, prayer does work. And Paul McGuire, you gotta be forceful, and so your testimony is right on the money.
Well, and that thing about and I there's a part of me that bristles when I hear the theoretical physicists talk about multidimensional, because I believe they're trying to steal the Word of God, because the Word of God says that there are levels of heaven, and the word of faith is nigh, even in your mouth. And God has been revealing to me that, his dimension, it doesn't have the same time and space as ours. And when we are actually, when his Holy Spirit comes into our soul and gives us life, he breathes the breath of life into us, he makes that connection between this dimension and the heavenly dimensions. And that's our connection with God. That's how we're actually seated in the heavenly places with Christ. And coming to that realization in the spirit, God has been showing me that, when you're speaking, it was like when speaking to that blood clot, that I was there at the blood clot because I was in the spirit, and the dimension of heaven has no space. So I was right there with it, It wasn't like it was some foreign person that I didn't even know, which I don't know in the natural, But stepping into that heavenly place with God, and I believe it's for everyone,
It is for everyone, and God bless you, my friend, and stay safe out there in the bitter cold of Colorado. Thanks for sharing your testimony. But yes, it's very much. Wow.
God bless you all, and
Merry Christmas, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. All right, let's go to area code 760. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report.
Good evening, Joe. Good evening, Doug. It's such a pleasure to speak to both of you, and thank you for giving part of your evening to the broadcast. There's millions of Americans around the country that are just very, very much interested in the truth, and you guys bring it to every show, and we're so grateful. I quickly like to make an observation and ask a question. The observation is that you guys bring so much truth, and a lot of it has to do with the truth that the mainstream media doesn't take the initiative to do, and sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming in kind of a dark way. So I'd like to take an observation to say, since it's Christmas and the Christmas spirit, I want to point out a few things that we should be thankful for. And one of them is the national gun bill that happened after the Sandy Hook got defeated. The attempted invasion of Syria was nixed, and that was all contrived. The fact that the state of Connecticut tried to force people to register their guns, they were up in arms, and folks said, no, we're not going to do it. The Bundy Ranch situation and the Oath Keepers standing up to them, and the American people saying, we're not going to have this. The landslide defeat of Obama in the 2014 elections, and yes, people, he was on the ballot. Ferguson situation, people trying to make that a race riot, and blacks and whites coming together and saying, no, we're not going to put up with this garbage. We're not going to have a race riot. We're going to get this resolved peaceably as best as we can. Washington State just recently tried to force people into a gun registration, and the people, fine people in Washington State said, you know what, we're going to protest in mass. Thousands of people came out, and the police said, we're not arresting anybody. If you guys want to not get involved with getting your guns registered, we're not going to have any issue with that. And then a few other points. CNN and MSNBC have record historical lows. I mean, we're talking way, way, way microscopic audiences for their broadcasts. And what that tells us is that the American people are a lot smarter than the mainstream media has made them out to be. And I'm so grateful to you guys. I can't say it enough. Thank you for all that you do. It's just truly a delight listening. Good night, everybody.
Wow, thank you. What a cogent, well-articulated call. And you know what? That caller was exactly right, on point on all of those issues. Now, we, of course, still have the ISIS, Western-backed ISIS attempting to destabilize Syria. We still have some things that are still going on, and, of course, the umbrella of the UN's arms trade treaty, how they're trying to attack the supply of ammunition as a backdoor route to gun control. We've got that. Yes, we've got all those to contend with, but isn't it nice to know that people like us and Alex Jones and other people, the Hawk and Steve Quayle, and I mean, boy, the list could go on and on and on, that have no connection to mainstream media, have no oversight over, at least not yet. When I say not yet, I mean the moment the oversight comes in, that's when we sign off. But isn't it great to know that we can change? We can actually effect change, and I believe that you, the listener, by listening, by tuning in, by being a part of this great family, and I mean great family, I do believe that it's just not, I mean, certainly it's just not us. It's you too, by talking, by listening, by understanding, by realizing, hey, wait a minute, all's not what it appears to be. And, of course, you get the round of applause, not us. And that's just a great thing. So that caller was just fantastically right on the money. That's what I've got to say about that. And I'll bet you there was no coal in his stocking. And, yes, I'm being commercial when I say that, of course. But, that's fantastic. So.
All right, let's get one more caller in here. We got 6 minutes left. We're going to go to area code 603. 603, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. You can take us out this evening.
Merry Christmas, Doug and Joe.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
To the people who spend Christmas and every day alone, I spend Christmas alone. I have family, but I just spend it alone because they're off. I find it helpful to go and help others who are unfortunate, and it's almost it's humbling. And God says, that He'll lift you up, and it just makes you feel better to help others who are less fortunate than you. And the other day,
isn't that great? Just to add to what you're saying, I trust you did that too. You did some type of activity that involved helping others.
I baked cookies, and I stuck 2 in a saran wrap baggie, handed it out to the homeless, or I would just stop my truck and randomly do it. And it just picked me up. My son is off with his girl, and I'm alone, and boo-hoo, and it's like, Lord, no, I can't do this. But the other night you had a gentleman who was talking about buying land, buying homes out in the woods. I am super glued in the city. And I said, Lord, how am I going to do this? And He said to my heart, are you willing to die for me? Are you willing to lose your life, to find your life? And I said, no, but how do I get ready for that? And many times on your show, I've heard, listening to shows and Hawk and Steve Quayle, and sometimes I get caught up in listening to it too much, but I believe He has revealed to many of us that the key is on our knees and in the Word, to be set with dying for Him. So regardless of what happens in the city, we're ready. I don't know if you can be ready to die, but to be at peace with losing your life for our Lord.
You bring up a very important point. There are people out there who are living in condos or assisted living centers or in apartments above pizza shops and bars and strip clubs or who knows what else. No money, no ability to be mobile. And you hear people, and I'm not picking on anyone or disparaging anything or anything anyone said, but you hear people saying, well, get out of the city. Well, wait a minute. Okay. You're going to give me a U-Haul and $1,000 and a place to live, or you point me in the direction. Look, I believe we, the remnant, are being pre-positioned, and we've got to play the positions in which we were given. If you were given a position in the city, it's you, buddy.
That's right, absolutely. Because who is going to minister to the herd and the lost and the white harvest in the midst of the city if we don't play the position the Lord has put us in? And I had a question. Yeah. How is W? Is he okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. Everything is fine. As a matter of fact, I think he was just recently on last week with John B. Wells. Everything's fine.
Okay.
And people have been asking about V and W, and V will be on, I think, at some point after the holidays. W, it's to be announced. Everything's fine.
Just checking, because I sent you an email, and I know you get hundreds of them. And have you ever checked out Enter Foods? Hawk and Steve support them. Have you ever gone in and checked them out, Doug?
You know what? You cut out what foods?
Enter, E-N-E-R, Enter Health Botanicals. Hawk and Steve Quayle support them. They're really super duper awesome. As far as
I didn't know about this. How'd you know about this and I didn't? I talk to Steve all the
I
time.
listen to Hawk every week. How can you not listen to that man?
Well, actually, yeah, I'm behind on. You know what? It's a good point. Shame on me. I'm gonna have ENER Foods. You said.
Yeah, so if you go into ENER Foods, it comes up to Enter Health Botanicals, and Steve Quayle.
I know what you're talking about.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're talking about. All right, I
don't know if it's a conflict of interest with your sponsor already.
No.
But I encourage you to go check it out.
Okay. Yeah. No conflict of interest whatsoever, and I just happened to. Yeah. The name and the. I know of them. Do I know them well? No, but I know who is behind that and the first name of the person. So, gotcha. All right. So,
thank you very much, and God bless you guys for the new year.
God bless
and
you
always.
As well.
Thanks, dear.
All right. Thanks for your call.
Bye.
Oh, yeah. And we sometimes, in fact, we're going to have the Hawk on to talk a little bit about a few things.
Yeah, he's been on a few times before.
Yeah.
I'll have to have him back on. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and folks, we do have some wonderful things planned for 2015, and if things do pan out, boy, I'll tell you what a year it will be, good and bad. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you. At this Christmas time, and I know that it's not Jesus' birthday today, of course. I know he was not born. But you know what? We celebrate this, and if it brings families closer together, that's great. And if you're listening to this, and I just hope you got something out of it. I hope you've been comforted and know that we're with you and we care and we're there. So tomorrow night we'll be back with additional insight, and maybe we'll crack the hacking code of Sony. Maybe that's what we'll do, or talk about a number of other issues that we've got to get into. So please tune us in tomorrow night. Joe, thanks for braving the winds to be here with me. And
it's actually pretty calm out, surprisingly.
Yeah, I know.
I think we missed the majority of what we were going to get, or it's coming later. Not sure, but it was fun. Thank everybody for joining us. God bless you guys. We'll be back here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Until then, stay safe, God bless, and have a great night.